El temazcal is seen as the earth's womb. And so you're kind of like connecting with Mother Earth, with Pachamama in that way. You're entering a womb space because it's in the shape of a dome. Hola, beautiful humans. Happy first episode and happy 2025. I am so happy and thankful to be recording this episode for you. It has been about a month since I've posted on this platform, and I am so sorry. But la vida está un poco crazy and we have to just go with the flow. And if I'm learning anything, it's to just get back on that horse, on that entrepreneurship horse, and keep going, because we have a vision here, we have a mission to accomplish, and we are not letting go of that. So, no importa lo que me tire la vida, aquí estoy. No me voy a rendir, okay? And I hope you don't either. And I'm just so excited to connect with you again and to be having this conversation with you. I actually started to just accumulate things that I want to talk and share about, because I was supposed to record this episode in different, weeks, like, oh, this week, no, then next week. And here we are a month later. So I have different topics that I want to touch on, and we're going to see how many of them we get to. But I wrote down, I wanted to share with you about my first temazcal, which was such an interesting and cool experience. During the holidays, I had this super interesting conversation with my cousin, who's a pastor, and it was cool to see, because we talked about religion in a couple episodes ago, and it was interesting to have this conversation with him, and so many parallels in the journey. And no sé, I wanted to share that with you too. And then I was a guest on Two Beautiful Mujeres podcast, so I want to share a little bit about that. And then I got evacuated, or I had an evacuation warning. I live in LA, if you don't know. And so the Eden fire is the one that impacted us, and I had a evacuation warning, which is not mandate. So there's two. There's a warning and a mandate. But we decided to leave due to a couple of reasons. One being that I could see the fire from my room window. Pero yeah, I'm going to share a little bit about that experience too. I truly hope that it has not impacted you, and that you are doing okay if it did. I am so thankful that there are so many resources out right now. I know those are temporary resources, but I really hope that it helps some people get back on their feet, at least for the time being. That's a whole other thing, guys. Pero as for us, we were able to come back home, basically, and so now I'm home, and I have so much gratitude around that. And yeah, so we're going to talk about a lot of different things today. And I, of course, have episodes with guests lined up for you, so don't worry. I'm excited to share those with you starting next week. But I kind of wanted to have this conversation with you to touch base, to say hello, and and to fill you in on some of the things that have been happening, some of the maybe like the visions that I have for this year. And actually, before I even get started, I want to invite you to a vision board night that we're going to have on Thursday. I just don't want to forget, and I don't want to save it until the end in case this is something that is of interest to you. So last year, in the episode that I did for the beginning of the year for the podcast, I did an episode where I walked you through different like exercises and different things that could help you create a vision when the vision is blurry. And so this year I wanted to do something similar, but more in like a workshop type way, so that like we can you can ask questions, as you go, as we talk through things. So that's what I'm going to be doing. It's this Thursday, January 16th at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And the reason that I want to invite you, and I think that it's going to be a great workshop, is because I tend to work with people that are in the midst of transformation. So maybe like letting go of who they think they needed to be, letting go of expectations, or motives that aren't their own. Like when you're stepping into a more authentic version of you, you're starting to recognize maybe you're a people pleaser, maybe an overachiever. And so the things that were driving your actions weren't always fully just you and your desire, but maybe others' expectations, opinions of you, etc. And so, anywho, because of that, there usually is a feeling of not feeling clear, right? There's a lack of clarity there. So, I have created just different ways and maybe like questions and prompts of like, how can you start to approach creating a vision for yourself, or clearing that up for yourself when it feels blurry or when you're feeling stuck or in the midst of transformation. So, for example, maybe it's hard for you to think about a vision for yourself, thinking of your current self. But what if you were to think about your inner child doing a vision board for you, or through the perspective of your highest self that maybe has no limitations, truly believes in you, wants the best for you, wants you to be happy and fulfilled? What kind of vision board would your highest self do? Even your ancestors, what kind of vision board would they like create for you? You know, can you step into their shoes and make a vision board through their perspective? Or, for example, thinking about what kind of year are you in, or season of your life are you in? Are you in a season of creation? Are you in a season of rooting down and like deepening into what's already in existence, or a season of exploration, you know? So I truly feel like this workshop is going to help people expand their vision for themselves and also clear out of the way some of the things that may be keeping you stuck or that may be making that vision blurry and you didn't even know it. So I invite you to join us. You can sign up. There's going to be a link in the description. You can find more information there, sign up there. But I'm looking forward to hosting this on Thursday, January 16th at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's going to be virtual, so you can join from the comfort of your home. And I'm going to provide like a template. We'll talk through things. We'll do a mindfulness practice. And it's a part of the Good EHAS community. And so I invite you to join. I'm excited for that. So next, I want to share with you my experience of the temazcal that I did as I have been planning myself, creating my own vision board and vision for 2025 for First and Healing. What is it going to look like? Part of what I've come back to is my goal of wanting to help bring to you stories, experiences, information that help you open your mind, that help you find different avenues of healing, that help you feel validated through different aspects of awakening. And so that's one of the goals that I have for this year, is to continue to bring in guests that have such different knowledge bases or approaches that are combining things in a really cool way. So that is definitely a goal of mine, is to continue that this year. And part of that is for me to continue, right? Like I need to continue on this exploration if I want to invite you to do the same for yourself. So one of my friends invited me to a temazcal, and it's so funny because when she did, it was Thanksgiving time. She was like, hey, do you want to go to this thing? It's in a couple of weeks. I said yes right away. I saw that it was like a healing experience, ceremony type thing, and I was like, yes. But I didn't even read it. So funny because like the day before, I start to actually read what it says and like, what am I about to experience, right? And so it says like it's a temazcal and that there's going to be hape as part of the ceremony. And if you guys listen to the episode with Denise, in it, she mentions that she does hape as part of her, like her daily mindfulness practice, which I thought was so interesting. So that was going to be there, and that it's a sweat lodge, a practice that has been done for many, many years. And essentially, el temazcal is seen as the earth's womb. And so you're kind of like connecting with Mother Earth, with Pachamama. In that way, you're entering a womb space because it's in the shape of a dome. And it becomes really hot in there because they're burning something inside in a pit, and so you're kind of smushed in there, and it's this very healing experience. So once I read all of that, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I didn't know I was in for that kind of experience. I had never done a temazcal or anything like that. The other very interesting aspect that I want to I want to start making more content about, which is like the little things that in the journeys end up being the big things, the synchronicities. Maybe you hear people talk about like, oh, I had a download or I experienced the synchronicity or it's like in alignment with me. I remember at some point in my journey, I would hear these things and I was like, that's cool. I wish that I had that type of connection. Or how do they know that that's real, you know? Or how does that even start to happen to someone? And, you know, it's so interesting because now that I'm fully in it and I feel like I am attuned to those things, I can see how we miss those things on a day to day basis, thinking that it has to be bigger. Even, for example, channeling or intuitive hits, you know, the moments where I have had sessions where I tell someone something and they're like tripping out because they're like, wait, it's so crazy that you said that because just the other day or this morning I was, or I see, you know, and those moments, I think I thought that they would happen in a way that was like out of body or something. But instead, usually in my sessions, I'm fully present, I'm fully there. And it's really about just saying what comes to my mind and not questioning it. And so it doesn't feel like anything other than a thought or an emotion. I just simply don't use logic to question if it makes sense or not. I say it or I state it, share it, and it ends up being some of the coolest experiences. They're not these, no sé, como out of reach things. They're actually right in front of us. So the interesting part about this Temazcal is that when I look at the address, I see that it's in East LA, East Los Angeles. Mind you, this was a couple of weeks prior to what's happening right now. But if you have listened to some of these episodes, you might know that I'm from East LA. That's where I was raised up until my preteen years. And not only was it in East LA, but it was like in the center of so much of my childhood. It was probably a few minutes from my elementary school, a few minutes from where my babysitters, like where my madrina and padrino would take care of me, a few minutes from the park that we would go to, a few minutes from a business my parents had growing up, and a few minutes from my old house or the house that I grew up in. And it was so crazy to me that that's where I was going to have this experience. So, anywho, we get there and I couldn't believe it. It's this house that is dedicated to healing. It's called Casa de Healing, I think. It's built upwards, which is interesting. And so they have like a gym type thing. They have a sauna, jacuzzi, and then at the very top, they have a temazcal, and that's like the dome. So my friend and I arrive and I decided to try hape. It was funny because like as soon as we got there, we sat down and she was going in a circle administering it to people. And as soon as we got there, it was like two people away. And so I don't know if this happens to you guys. Let me know, comment or share it with me somehow if before you try something like this, if you get really nervous. Because I do. I like, my heart was like beating out of my chest and I told my friend, I don't know if I want to do this, you know. But as soon as she came, the person that was going to administer it, the shaman, I was like, yes, like let's do it. And it was an experience. I don't want to encourage or discourage you from doing it, but the intent of it is to clear your channel. And so there's some purging that's involved, and it's supposed to be like grounding. For me, it was honestly overwhelming, especially because I knew we were about to go inside the Temazcal. And so as I was kind of purging and going through the motions, they were explaining that we're going to go in there with nothing and that we're going to do 4 rounds and, you know, like kind of explaining the whole thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't feel good. Like, I don't feel ready to go into this when I'm nauseous and just feeling a lot of things, you know? So it was a little bit overwhelming because I felt like I was in a time crunch to get over these symptoms and what was happening in this portion of the thing, because the next portion was about to start. So being in the ground, of where I grew up was making me teary-eyed in that moment, because in the space había bean bags, and it was like very so beautiful. There was these signs that said like your intuition led you here, mad hippies ahead, the only way out is in, like different sayings that as we're healing and awakening, I'm sure you guys have come across them in your own way. Maybe it was a book, a song, a person that you follow. Similarly, for me, it had been years in the making for me to get to a place like this one and understand it to the depth that I did. Like when I read The Only Way Out is In, I understood it deeply because it was something that at first confused me so much. And now it's part of how I see the world. And when we were there, they were playing music, and the music was healing music that I started to listen to when I was in Tennessee. For one, I stopped listening to a lot of the music that I used to when I was out there, and I started listening to really relaxing, calming, hippie vibe music, because my experience there with my sister and everything was so overwhelming that I was constantly on high alert. And so I needed things to ground me and bring me down and help me through. And I remember thinking, like, I feel like such a little weirdo being 29, listening to this music, and I felt like very alone in that. I felt like probably my friends don't listen to this type of music, and I remember I would wake up. It's kind of like misa music where, I would wake up and listen to this playlist, and it would talk about like water and the ground and the soil and sisterhood and these things that I wasn't living necessarily, but I was tapping into spiritually. There we go. That's what I'm trying to say. And so then to get to this place, and by accident, it's in the middle of my hometown. They're playing this music, and I think all I could think about was it's like a cycle. Like I literally made this huge U-turn, or not in reverse, but forward. You know how they say like our journeys are upward cycles? I was like, wow, I made this huge 32-year cycle, right? Of experiences, of listening to my intuition, of letting go of things, all the way back to the same land, but with such a different understanding of life, perspective, outlook. I don't know. It's just like so interesting to me. I hope it's interesting to you. And I wonder if you've experienced moments where you're in a similar space, or maybe with similar people, but your experience of it is so different. And I hope that you take a moment to reflect on that, because again, maybe like in life, sometimes we think that there's going to be these big explosive moments that are life-changing, and sometimes there are, but sometimes there are moments like this one that show you the distance between who you once were and who you're becoming, And for me personally, it felt like this like confirmation of alignment, essentially. I have never felt more like me, and to come back and maybe recognize I'm in a place that created the version of me to survive. And over the last few years, I've made so much intentional work to shed those layers to get to the core of who I am. Felt so beautiful. And then I went into the Temascal. So I know I make long stories longer. So I ended up going into the Temascal, and definitely like wear comfortable clothes and be ready to be uncomfy for a little bit in terms of like space wise. But thankfully I had two people that were very kind next to me. And that was an experience. It was beautiful. I would do it again. A few themes came up. So basically they do different rounds. They call them like round 1, 2, 3, 4 phases. And the first phase was childhood. So of course, like I'm literally in the middle of the tierra where my childhood happened. And so I think I got many different little visions come through, of like my childhood, and the people in my childhood, and the experiences that I had, what made me, who I thought I had to become to survive and to make it through, and then they kind of evolved each phase. So then it was like teen years, then adulthood, and then when you get older. And the underlying kind of energy that we were bringing in, which was another little interesting tidbit, is the deer. So the deer is like the energy that they were going to call in. It was in December, so that makes sense, right? Like it's aligned Christmas and no sé como winter, not Christmas, winter. Pero the interesting part is that on my father's side of my lineage, they actually hunted deer. And so to the degree that I've tasted it, because of like growing up, I tasted it because we would go like on camping trips, and basically like my dad's side, they grew up in not in a rancho, but more so like in el monte. There we go. Like kind of in el monte, and they would hunt for food because they were really poor. And so they learned how to fish and how to hunt, and that's something that as a family, like they carried through, and when they came to this country. So one of the phases we were supposed to like envision the deer energy, and I remember like I kind of envisioned the deer, and I looked at it, and my first instinct was to tell it like I'm a safe person, like I'm not here to cause harm in any way or to like hunt you. And thankfully it responded well. Like in my vision, everything was okay, because I think I was a little bit with fear of like, ¿qué tal si, because of my lineage, like something strange happens in the visioning or something, but thankfully it was a good experience. But yeah, other than that, like we made it through the whole thing, and it was beautiful. I feel like it's so cool to expose yourself to new ways of healing, because our bodies, I think, like, this is a little bit of a tangent, but our bodies were not meant for like cubicle working, or they maybe don't thrive in that, in the fluorescent lights and the pace of this life, getting up and drinking coffee and drinking stuff to stay awake, or just like the rhythm of life. I think takes us outside of maybe more natural grounding healing experiences on a regular basis. And I felt like this one was one of those. Like, as my finances permitted, I definitely would love to do, like, let's say a monthly temazcal, just connecting to the earth, to each other. No sé, like, I am so thankful for this path that continues to show me maybe what I felt but never saw. And I want to share that with you, that sometimes this journey, when you start to listen to your intuition isn't based off of what you see, but what you feel. And so it may take time for you to see what you've been feeling. It may take many different little adjustments for things to click into place and then finally make sense. And that feeling that you had, it's like the confirmation comes later sometimes, And for me, I think I had been feeling for a really long time that I knew the path, you guys know, like in HR wasn't the path for me. And even though I was very lost as to like, what, if not this, then what? The betting on then what is going to come has shown me little by little, what does that look like? I remember even just like a year or two ago, like really questioning, well, how do I merge this world? Because I'm living here in the States. So what does it mean to integrate all of this stuff that I'm learning and perceiving and, questioning and all the things? Like, how do I integrate? And I think little by little, I've been getting that answer. It's like, you can do both. You can be a part of both. In fact, the point of awakening and like really, connecting to, let's say, your power, connecting to your purpose or your mission or your spirit or your soul or whatever it is that the journey that you're on, at some point, I think some of us who were on this path thought it was to live off the grid, right? Escape the matrix, if you will. But more and more we're learning it's to stay within and to embody what you are coming into awareness of and what you're learning and what you're recognizing, that is actually the challenge and the gift. That's what I've been learning for myself. It's like, oh, like I get to integrate that. And there are other people already super integrated into that, and I just get to open up to what does that look like? And sometimes it takes new experiences like this one to be like, right where I grew up, where I thought, oh no, like people don't think like me. Ahí estaba, So I think that's super cool. And I hope that you enjoyed me sharing that with you, because yeah, it was something super, super new. I'm going to cross it off my list here on to the next subject. But new experience, I would definitely try it again. And so I wanted to call this episode The More I Know, The More I Know I Don't Know, because that has been my path, opening up to stuff, opening up to what if I don't know it all? What if I could learn more? What if? And that has allowed for my path to open and for things, I think like when we are embodying that like go-getter energy, right? That a lot of us embody, the yo sí, like lo voy a lograr, I'm gonna make my parents proud, I'm gonna make myself proud, I'm gonna make it in this country. Sometimes we don't recognize, like we see that as expansive. I'm gonna talk for myself, speak for myself, not for you, pero I saw that as expansive. I thought I was like going after what I should. I thought I was expanding. I thought that was the route. And I have seen such a different version of that in this path. As I've opened up to like CE, like yes, and what if it doesn't have to be that way? What if it doesn't have to be in the way of partiéndome la madre? And just like, hustling and grinding and da 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 da. Like, what if there's another way? And that opened the door to then a more authentic version of me and more authentic and aligned experiences. And I'm just like, wow, I would have never, ever logically gotten to this point, or that wasn't part of my plan, because it couldn't have been, because I didn't fully know myself. So that's why I'm so passionate about authenticity, and like helping people see what's in the way of them truly being themselves, or like what's in the way of you listening to your intuition. I'm currently working on just kind of my bio and different things like that. And I wrote out like using my intuition to help you figure out what's stopping you from you listening to yours, and so I don't know, I just like, that's why I'm so passionate about it, because it's like, yes, and there's both, like, and the path that I saw for myself would have never fulfilled me in the way that this one is, porque it wasn't fully me. I wasn't bringing all parts of me to the table. And there were parts of me that I thought were me, but I created to make other people proud, or because of the expectations that I thought I had to carry. But once I dropped them and I learned like, well, who really am I? Now I can align to things that fully feed my soul, which is what we are, if you believe in that, beyond someone that achieves and gets the degrees and that kind of stuff, which leads me to this next thing I want to share with you, which is the talk with my pastor cousin. So there is a side of my family that is very religious. As I've been on this path, I have felt a little like that distance between religion and myself, right? Like I've been questioning different things, and you guys heard that episode with Denise. If you didn't and you want to, you should. But we talked about religion a little bit, or a lot of it in that episode. And so based on that, personally, I think my growth made me feel like I was very distant from their experience, their way of living life and viewing life. And so there hasn't been like a huge effort on my part of like kind of merging into that world, But it is really cool that my cousin has a church that he's a pastor at, and I respect it. Like I never judge it or anything or question it. It's more so like that's not my path, and I'm not gonna pretend that it is. Anyways, they came over for the holidays, and so him and I started to talk, and he used to be an architect prior to his life now. And so I thought, whoa, I had never thought about that connection point between you and I, that we both worked in a more traditional avenue and then decided to leave it. So when we started to talk, we kind of talked about that. We talked about moving through, our paths as first gens, fulfilling that expectation of going to school and doing good and being good students and making it in that way, right? And then going to a good job, and then learning about like those environments and like being like, oh, whoa, they're not maybe what we thought they were. So I asked him, how did that transition happen to you? Because obviously, I was like, you obviously probably took a pay cut, right? And he was like, yeah, definitely. So he told me that he was on the verge of becoming owning his own company, which would have likely led him to a financial, like increasing his finances. And he said he had everything lined up, like the name of the company, just like a lot of things lined up for the next phase of his work, because he had moved up in his world, in engineering or architect world. And then this opportunity to become a pastor for a church came up. And so it was a very faith-based, shift for him. And so I thought that was so interesting. And I shared kind of my version of that, where I told him, like, for me, I constantly heard about my potential, and yet I felt the need to hold myself back because I wasn't willing to give more of myself in that way. I felt like it just wasn't aligning. I didn't feel good about what it would feel to move up in that world. And I kept hearing about like the thick skin that I should just build and that I would be fine. I would get used to it. There was a part of me, I think my intuition, my soul, that was saying this isn't the path for us, And so even though I was ambitious and hungry in that way, and I knew like maybe the next position that I had was going to get me to those six figures, there was a huge part of me that was yearning for a purpose. And I told him, like, I wanted income with a heartbeat. So he was like, wow, that's so interesting. Like, yeah, exactly. Like, we aligned essentially in what we were feeling in those moments, and that it didn't matter the financial potential when there's a part of you that's seeking something different. So, I thought that was so cool, the connection point there. And then we continued to speak, and we talked about, for example, like, working with others, and how when you're grounded in, for me, it's like faith, but it's not religious faith. It's like a faith in self, faith in the universe, which it's a different word for God, pero pues es probablemente, there's a lot of similarity there, but I'm rooted in that. And so there's different things that come from that you don't expect. Por ejemplo, sometimes your role with people is to trigger them. So, for example, in customer service, they tell you like the customer is always right, no? But when you are doing your own thing and you are rooted in your truth and alignment, then me being in integrity isn't to agree with someone that I have in front of me and be like, oh yeah, you're right. Like, I think my role is to be a mirror to you and say, this is what I'm seeing. Do you see it too? Or how do you see it? Like, what do you, like, when I tell you this, what happens inside of you? What comes up for you? And then we move that way. It's not to convince you of anything. It's not to move you in a certain way. It's like to say what I see, say what I feel, and then to allow you to interpret it as you will. And typically that creates change, because then you're able to reflect. Maybe there's perspective shifts. Maybe there's an emotional release that happens, and it's beautiful. I love doing what I do in one-to-one work, which, by the way, I have availability for that. So I'm also including that in the link in the description. But I was telling him, isn't it so interesting that sometimes our role is to trigger people, and it's not to make them happy? And he was like, yeah. So then he tells me about like a certain person, how he was speaking to them, and how he was standing on like his integrity, and that resulted in the person walking away, but eventually the person came back and like they talked like months or years later, and there was this conclusion to it that was so interesting. And similarly for me too, like sometimes I've recognized that sometimes people are seeking for others to tell them what they want to hear, and that's not the type of person that I am. And that makes me feel like I'm in integrity, and yet some people get upset by that. So that was a really cool like connection point there también. And then I was like, financially, how are you doing it? I imagine it's been different, right? A different level of income and all of that. And I was telling him like how it's so interesting, because to me this path has felt like a boomerang, in the sense that because I am grounded in that self-love, self-trust, in the intuition, sometimes I go out in the world and I do my thing for a bit, and then I come back, and I like ground again and do it again. Maybe it feels like a failure. Maybe it feels like it's not moving fast enough, or like it's not going anywhere. And like, it's like a boomerang. I always get to come back and I refuel, and I'm like, all right, otra vez. And so he was sharing with me same. He said like the same, sometimes you make these changes and choices that don't seem like they're right, or that seem like they're putting you backwards. And then something happens and you recognize like, no, yeah, integrity and alignment to your truth is constantly like the best thing you could do for yourself, and so he shared with me certain changes that they're making for the church or for the groups, and how they resulted maybe positively in the end, but not right away. And yeah, so that teaches you, like, you may think you know someone, you may think, oh, well, we would never connect, we would never have anything in common, and yet life can sometimes surprise you, and I try to always be a student of life, and remember that you can learn from anyone. And so that was a really cool example of that for myself. And I was like, wow, I've learned so much about you. And in the conversation, I did say, I hope that you can hold space for the fact that even though we're aligning in so much, there's probably so much that we don't align in. Because obviously in his way of speaking, he quoted scripture a lot, and so I was just like, I hope he's not interpreting like, oh, like she's gonna serve the church or something like that. But no, it was very respectful, and he was like, yeah, no, like, in whatever way you're doing it, like, it's just really cool, because it seems like you're on the path, on this path that many of us kind of receive this calling, and we start to just follow it, and I was like, yeah, it's really cool, and it's very different. And yeah, so again, I hope that you enjoyed that kind of little reflection, porque I wrote it down to be like, okay, I want to share this with them. And the other thing that I had for you is that I was a guest in different podcasts. So I'm going to link both of them in the description too, in case you want to hear different ways or different pieces of my story that maybe I haven't shared here. So the first one was, I was on Crystal's Crystal, who has an episode with us. I was in her podcast. It's called the Holistic Healers Community. And with us, she shared about holistic healing. In her episode, she mentioned the different, kind of like that pie, and the different areas of your life. And on her podcast, for my episode, I shared more of the story of how I ended up doing first gen healing. And I really took them on a roller coaster. They said, share your story. And I was like, okay, here it goes, So I shared about like leaving corporate and moving to Tennessee to be with my sister during her treatment, and kind of how those things added up to me creating First Gen Healing, because she let me know that like she was a listener of the podcast. And so I was like, oh, let me tell you, how I got to this point. So if you want to hear about that, it's a roller coaster, but I feel like it's a really good episode. So I'm gonna link it in the description. And then I was in Melissa's podcast. Melissa, you haven't heard from yet. She's going to be on the podcast this month. And so she has a podcast of her own, and it's the I Heal, We Heal podcast. And on her podcast, we talked about the impact of cancer in our family units. So just kind of like how it changed me, how it changed dynamics within the family as we were going through that process, because she has also gone through a cancer journey of her own. So she was like wanting to talk about those changes in her family, and she invited me on to have that kind of conversation with her, which was really beautiful. So if you want to hear about that también, then I am going to link it in the description too. Okay, so I have been talking for about an hour, and I was going to talk to you about the evacuations, but I'm going to save that for a little bit. It's only been a couple of days since I've come back home, and I was ready to talk about it, but tal vez, no sé, I'm thinking maybe it's good for me not to, and just to like continue to process a little bit. I know people are still navigating that. Some of you guys may be navigating it for yourselves. Like maybe you're in not currently back in your home, or maybe unfortunately you lost your home. And so what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to gather a couple of links to put in the description of resources that I have found. And also, I know Latinx Therapy put together a Google Doc of Latino families that have lost their homes, if in case you have the funds to go donate. So that's what I'm gonna do instead for now. I'm not gonna share my story or my, the little stories that I have from that. I'll save it for maybe our next solo episode together. But I truly, truly am sending you a big, big hug if you're navigating that. Please remember to wear a mask if you're out in the air. Even though it looks clear in like clear skies in some places, there's still a lot of contamination. So keep that in mind. And I truly hope that you guys are not experiencing that. But if you are, I am sending you a big hug. I can't imagine. I mean, I lived through like I said, like the voluntary evacuation, and that was traumatic in and of itself. So my heart goes out to those of you navigating that still. But other than that, I really hope that you found today's episode interesting, that you took something from it. Let me know if you did. I would love to hear back from you. Before I let you go, I do want to mention a little bit about the vision for 2025, because I'm really excited about it actually. And basically, I have been really wanting to streamline things. I feel like at some point in my entrepreneurship journey, I started to like separate things, and I felt like the podcast was its own thing. Then I created the Good Hijos Gone Badish community. Then I had like my Corazones, Pasos Firmes, and I kind of like just separated everything. And so I've been really brainstorming, like, how can I bring it all together and make it one thing again? So I'm really excited because I've decided that the Good Hijas Gone Badish community is going to be the First Gen Healing community. Coming back to the name of the podcast, coming back to First Gen Healing, my platform. It's all one. I'm recognizing that my goal and my vision at the end of the day is to speak with you, to speak with fellow First Gens on healing and awakening journeys. And I know that means a million different things. And that's actually part of the beauty of it. That is the niche, because I think in the past I was made feel like I needed to niche down further, and that it needed to be something other than what I originally thought. And I've just been coming back to that original vision of I want to create experiences and spaces and places and services that serve First Gens on healing and awakening journeys. And that's what I'm coming back to. So I still have the Good Hijas Gone Bad website, and I'm working on renovating it so it aligns with this new direction, but it will be the same community. So if you are looking for community and you want to join us for the vision board night, then you would sign up to this through the Good Hijas Gone Bad link, which very soon will be transformed into the First Gen Healing communities. The vision for that is to bring some of the podcast guests on to do workshops for us in the First Gen Healing community, to talk about and deepen into some of the topics that we talk on here in the community. So we're going to have like one workshop per month, and then we meet bi-weekly, so that's one of the meetings. And then the second meeting each month is going to be like a vent session, a session where you can come together and deepen into topics and share our experiences. And I'm so excited for that. And the online hub is housing the replays of the meetings, mindful practices that you can use. And it's going to also house, like resources and different things like that. So I'm so excited to continue to build this and, kind of align everything as I've been thinking. I still will offer one-to-one sessions because I love those so much, and such beautiful change happens within them. In fact, just yesterday, I got a message from someone, and we had a session a year ago, just one, by the way. And she was like, I just want to tell you, here's the update of what I've been up to. And I want you to know how much our session together impacted this beautiful change. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like I love getting those updates, especially when some time has passed and the impact that they can have, So I am offering one-to-one services or like one-to-one sessions. I'll also link those in the description. And I have a couple open spots for more of an extended mentorship, So I like to call it the Pasos Firmes program, but it's essentially one-to-one mentorship. We work together for 3 months minimum, and it's really to create space for your authentic self, whether that means learning how to prioritize yourself as a first gen or self-discovery as a first gen, or really stepping into a more authentic and aligned version of you. That's kind of the space to do so. And it's a space and a place where you get clarity, you get my support. We bring in that intuitive guidance, and then you start to listen to your own intuition too, which is so, so beautiful because we make room for that. We clear out of the way, like what's in the way of your intuition, of your desires. So if that is something that you're interested in, I will also link that. So a ton of links will be in the description. Make sure that you check them out. But other than that, first gen, I hope with all of my corazon that 2025 brings you beautiful things, experiences, people, that it brings you fulfillment and joy, and that you are able to be present for it all and celebrate yourself through it all. So remember, first gen, that I love you, I love me, and I can't wait for you to love yourself, okay? Okay, this is the year. This is the year where you love yourself, where you take up space as yourself, when you do things for you, when you stop caring about el que dirán, okay? Okay, pues, cuídate mucho, and I will talk to you later. Bye.